Hey guys, welcome back. This is Vijay Vemula, your Citrix and Azure trainer and architect. In the series of videos that which we are preparing on Azure Active Directory, this video talks about AD Connect. AD Connect is a tool that which you can use to synchronize your identities of on-premises to Azure cloud. So in this video, we are going to talk what AD Connect is, requirements to configure AD Connect in the environment, and then how do we set up AD Connect in the environment. So these are the topics that which we are going to cover. Without waiting further, let us get into discussion. Now, what is AD Connect? As I explained initially, it's a service or it's a connector that will help you to synchronize your on-premises identities to Azure cloud, which means it integrates. It helps you to have a hybrid identity environment. Then what is the advantage of having hybrid identity environment? Your users need not have to have two identities, one on cloud, the other one on premises. If you have AD Connect in place, it synchronizes the identities and users will have a common identity both on premises and Azure cloud. And it also helps you to use features like conditional access, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on. You can control users and devices by setting up policies, by using MDM solutions like Intune. And of course, you can also give access to your SaaS-based applications like Office 365 or Salesforce and so on. And this will also help you, when I say this, the Azure AD Connect service, in case if you use, which enables hybrid identities, will also help your developers to use these modern identities, modern authentication solutions. And of course, it also simplifies your management. You may not have to manage identities separately for on-premises and Azure cloud. So in short, Azure AD Connect is an identity service that will help you to synchronize your on-premises identities to Azure cloud. Then what are the requirements if I want to set up this? What do I need to have on-premises? And what is the requirement on Azure Active Directory? On-premises, you need to set up a separate server, which is called as AD Connect server. You can name as per your naming convention. And you need to have a domain controller, at least 2012 or later. In case we are using password right back, it's always good to go with 2012 or later. And your AD Connect server can sit on 2012 or later as well. And if you want to go with an enterprise database solution, then you may opt for SQL Server. Otherwise, the service uses SQL Express. It is recommended to go with SQL Server for your production environments. And a couple of other requirements on your AD Connect server, you need to enable PowerShell remote execution policy to remote sign. And of course, you require a user account with an enterprise admin credentials for your AD connected to talk to your on-premises Active Directory environment. Then what are the requirements for the AD Connect when it comes to Azure Active Directory? you need to have a custom domain added. And if you haven't seen my earlier videos, I would request you to go and see how do we add and verify custom domain. The domain name should be exactly in match with whatever you have on premises. For example, if your on-premises domain is xyz.com, the same domain should be added as a custom domain on Azure AD. Like you need an enterprise admin account for your on-premises, here for Azure Active Directory, you require an account which is part of a role called as Global Administrator role. A global admin role is a super user role on Azure Active Directory. Whoever is part of this role will be able to manage all aspects of your Azure Active Directory. So on premises, you need an account with enterprise admin credentials. On an Azure Active Directory, you need an account with global administrator roles. Okay, so then we understood what is Azure Active Directory is, what is Azure Active Directory connector is, or AD connector is, or connect rather. We understood what AD Connect is, and we did also understood advantages that which you are going to get when you have AD Connect in place. And then we understood what are the requirements when it comes to the setting up of this environment. Now we think without waiting further, let us get into a quick demonstration of this. Here I got my domain controller. I'll quickly show you the domain name, and I got a domain with the name called as virtualvmla.com, and I assume that this is your on-premises. And on premises, what we are going to go and create some identities. I'll name them as on-prem user 1, right? And then I'll just deselect this. I'll put password. Right, this is my on-prem user 1. I'm going to go and create another user as well here, which I call it as on-prem user 2. You can have that user can change the password or must change the password for just demonstration purpose. And I'm saying that on-prem demo group, on-prem group, on-prem security group 1. Okay, so I think I will go and name this on-prem, right? Security group 1. And I'll go and add my users to this. And when I go ahead and install, right? So AD Connect on my AD Connect server, then I should be able to replicate this. So this is my domain controller. So now, as I explained, you need to have a separate server, isn't it, for your what do you call it as identity purpose, right? So you need to have a separate server. So for that, what we have is we have another server. Let me pick that up. So this is my second server. And this server we are going to go and use as our AD Connect. And if you look at this server should be added to the domain, right? So this server should be added to the domain. You can see it AD Connect server added to the domain called as virtualvmla.com. On this server, just to make sure that you have what do you call it as set the execution policy, right? How do you get the execution policy? PowerShell execution policy you can get by using a command called as get execution policy. Then it is remote signed. That's good. In case if it is not, then you use a command called as set hyphen execution policy, and then the policy is remote signed. Then press enter. That should be setting up your execution policy, that whatever you want, right? So you can just go ahead and uh, you know set that up in case if you got any issues with that, right? So since you got execution policy set to remote sign, we are good there. The next step is I'm going to go and download Azure AD Connect. So I'll go ahead and download Azure AD Connect, right? So I think this is the link. Right, if you look at the details, then what does it say? It says that it helps you have a hybrid identity. Whatever we discussed is here. And then if you look at the system requirements, you can go and install it on 2012, 2012, or 2016 and 2019. Okay. So I'll go ahead and download this. All right, I'll straight away go ahead and install this one, right? So installation is, there are two parts of it. One is the installation and second one is configuration. We will be discussing all those options as we move on. Right, so this is the license agreement. I'm going to go ahead and accept it and say continue. Now here you got two options, isn't it? So one is customize, the other one is express settings. In case if you want to have more control and you want to see different options when it comes to the installation, you go with custom. Otherwise, if you want to go with the default settings, you can choose express settings, but I want to go with customize option. I want to show what are the different options you see when you go with installation, right? So here we are in the custom install, and you see the installation location. It basically installs itself on C program files in a directory called as Microsoft Azure AD Sync. As I said in our discussion, you can use a SQL Server database. Now, if you want to go with an enterprise solution, yes, that is the recommended one. And what you need is you require a database with this name. Okay, so you need AD Sync database, and you create a database with that name and give the server name, and that's all you need. And you need to make sure about the permissions part. Now, in case if you don't want to go with SQL Server, it installs SQL Express for its configuration. And then in case if you want to use some service accounts, you can use it. So, and then when you install this AD Connect, it basically creates some groups locally on this machine. I'll show you once this is created. So it creates three groups. Okay, so administrators group, operators groups, of course four, browser group and password reset groups. In case if you don't want to go with the default names, you want to have your own names, you can create the groups and specify the names here. But I don't want to go with that. I'll leave them as is. And you can also import, the synchronization settings, which we will be configuring as we move on. If you got already synchronization settings, it's almost like an answer file that which you can use. So while I leave this default, so I just want to show what are the different options you have here. I'll click on install. I see it is installing SQL Server Express local database. In case if you specify SQL Server details, of course it won't install that SQL Express. Now let that installation go on. As you see, it takes a while. I'll just pause this video. I'll come back. You can see it is installing synchronization service. Once it is done with this installation, you need to go with the further configuration of that where you got very important settings related to the password synchronization and so on. Right, this is what I was talking. Now, once you are done with the initial install, it is asking you to specify the sign-in method. Now, as you see, there are multiple sign-in methods here, right? So, password hash synchronization, pass-through authentication, federation services, and so on. Now, the important things that which you need to know here is one is password hash synchronization, which means from your on-premises, whatever the identities that are getting replicated to your Azure Active Directory, along with those identities, the password hash of those identities will also get replicated. So that is the password hash synchronization. And then there is a other option called as pass-through authentication, which is you will be able to authenticate yourself on Azure Cloud, but here the password won't get synchronized. And in case if you got a federation services, if you want to use it, you can go with this option as well. And the other option you see is if you want to enable single sign-on, then you will be selecting this option as well. So for this demonstration, what I do is I'll just go with the password hash synchronization. I will be preparing a separate video on the different authentication methods or sign-on methods with the differences and advantages of using these. Which one is preferable on what? So that will be the next video that which I will be preparing. So I'm not going to cover in detail about these, but remember we are going to go and use password hash synchronization here, which synchronizes your password hashes along with your, what do you call it, as user IDs. I'm saying next, and this is what I was saying, right? So you need to connect to two environments, right? This AD connect has to connect itself to your Azure AD, right? This AD Connect server has to connect it to your Azure Active Directory, and of course, it has to connect it to your on-premises directory services as well. So there should be some authentication that should be happening between these two. Now that authentication happens using, what do you call it, as a user ID with global admin privileges, which is on Azure Active Directory, and of course a user ID with enterprise admin credentials, which is on your on-premises. So on Azure Cloud, I already got a user ID here, right? So I already got a user ID here, so which I will be using. If you look at this particular guy, vijay@vmlofau@hotmail.com. So this guy is part of a role called as global administrator role. If you go to the assigned roles, you will be able to see this guy is already part of the global administrator's role. In case if this user ID is not part of this role, then you can straight away go to add assignments and choose the role and add it, as simple as that. Right, so you will be able to select the global admin role from here and just add it. That's all, very simple. So since this guy is already part of the global administrator's roles, I'm going to go and put the user ID and password. Right, say next. So what it does, it connects to your Azure Active Directory and validates the credentials, and of course looks for the permissions. Now, once this part of authentication is done, the next part is authenticating to your on-premises directory services. Now, as I said, I got only one directory. Then how is that it is picking this domain name? Because this machine is already added to the domain. Now I need to add this particular domain, isn't it, which is virtualvmla.com. So in order to use this domain and in order to replicate the identities, whatever I have here, I need to add this directory. When I click on add directory, it asks you the credentials with enterprise admin privileges. I'm going to go and use the administrator account here, but in the real-time world, you will be creating a separate user ID for this. Uh, so that is the best practice because this is a lab. I am using the default administrator account. So I entered the username password. It validates the credentials and you see it adds this directory. So now you have that connectivity to your Azure AD and of course authentication to Azure Active Directory, and you got authenticated this connector to your on-premises directory services as well. So next, and it is going to go and ask, once we have this directory added, so what it does is it basically asks you what is the user principal name or what is that attribute that which you would like to use as a user, right? Select the on-premises attribute to use the Azure Active Directory username. Most of the times it is UPN. Let us leave that as is, and it also picks the the domain name and also and domain name and other stuff here. You can see that verified domain name on Azure Active Directory as well. So I'm leaving this as UPN and say next. In case if you want to filter, what are the identities that which you may want to replicate, then you can also filter here. In case if you may not want to replicate the entire domain, you got some organization unit that which you may want to replicate, you can do so. So you can just filter this based on your requirement. Only those identity repositories or OUs or whatever you have here which you select, they will be replicated. So I'll leave that as is. I want to replicate the entire domain, so that's fine. And then uniquely identifying your users. And in case if you want to filter further, you can do it. And then here you got very important settings. One is password write back, right? So in case if your user uses self-service password reset, and then you may want to replicate back your passwords to on-premises, you can enable this option, which is very handy in case you want to, which is required in fact, in case if you want to replicate the passwords right back to, or in case if you want to enable password right back to your on-premises. Right? So say next, and then it goes and configures the the AD connect. I'll leave as is, and then I'll click on install. So it takes a while. I am going to go and pause the video for a while, and then I'll come back once the configuration is done. Configuration is still on. I will wait for that to complete, and then we'll come back. There you go. So you see this configuration is completed. And now what you will be seeing is whatever the identities you have here on premises on your domain controller. Now they should be replicating to your Azure Active Directory, isn't it? So if I go back to my Azure Active Directory and go to the users, now you don't see any user which is flagged as directory synced as yes, right? So there is one which got created during this configuration, and of course you will also be seeing some other identities. So in some time you will be seeing those user IDs that which you created replicating here, right? There you go, right? You have on-prem user 1 and you have on-prem user 2 as well. Now these two users now got replicated to your Azure Active Directory, and these guys, they will be able to log into your Azure environment like any other user, right? Let me quickly show you that. So on-prem user 1 at virtualvmlaw.com, right? So next, and then the password. So it is asking for self-service password reset. That should be okay. I can cancel this. Right. So there you go. Right. So now this guy who is an on-premises user now got into the Azure portal. That's how you can go ahead and replicate your identities from on-premises to Azure cloud using AD Connect. Hope this use Hope this video is helpful to you. We'll be meeting with another video sometime later. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs button. If you like this video, please like it. If you got something out of this video, please do hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Thanks for watching.